Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my reaction to basically both of the Matchroom boxing events from last night. So of course we have Jaron Ennis winning via KO in round 1 versus Lima, and Makhmudov winning via unanimous decision versus Dave Allen. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content and I will try my best to get it out there for you guys. I really appreciate all the support in which I've had with it so far, and the community in which we've got in it I feel like is very good at the moment. And so yeah, the link will be in the description. Thank you very much. And so we'll start off with, I suppose, probably the most exciting fight, in which was, of course, Jaron Ennis winning via stoppage in round 1 versus Lima to claim the WBA interim world super welterweight title. I mean, basically, Ennis did exactly what I'm sure everybody in that arena, including Ennis, including Eddie Hearn, except from, I suppose, Team Lima and Lima's fans, wanted him to do, and that was to go out there and show that he was who everybody kind of expected he was, levels above of Lima, and go out there and get the early stoppage. And for sure his stock has raised in that fight. I mean, it was always going to be a risky fight for Jaron Ennis, because of course he's fighting somebody who on paper and to the actual eye is meant to be so much worse than Jaron Ennis, and the fans were not really excited to see this fight. So the only real way that his stock would have raised in this fight was if he was to go out there and get a first round stoppage, because if the fight ends up going past the sixth, seventh round and longer, then at that point the fans aren't as interested and the hype's gone a bit, and in general as a whole people are questioning how good Jaron Ennis is. But of course he was able to go out there and get that stoppage, and again that's also nice to see as well, because Ennis showcased that he has a good level of power as well, moving up into a division where Lima has fought at middleweight before, so he is the guy who's used to being the bigger guy. And so again the fact that he was able to go out there and get a stoppage again showcased the power, the size. Moving up isn't a problem for Jaron Ennis. Of course he didn't move up the same amount as what Terence Crawford did, and the fact that they were basically calling out and saying that that he could go to super middleweight and fight Terence Crawford, pretty much is what Eddie Hearn was saying after the fight. Within a few more fights, I don't feel like you should be calling out Terence Crawford just yet, because I have a feeling that fight won't ever happen, just because of the way that things are lining up. I think Jaron Ennis has waited a bit too long in his career, not being given the opportunities against the best guys, where I don't think Terence Crawford's got a tremendous amount of more fights left. So unless out of all of a sudden Jaron Ennis goes on to beat everybody within the space of like 2 years, then I just don't see that he's going to be fighting Terence Crawford. And again, I just don't know why you should be talking about that fight just yet. I think you should focus on the fights that are I suppose a bit better and make more sense, like your Virgil Ortiz's, like your Xander Zayas, like your Murtazaliev, like your Abbas Barrios, them type of fights. The other champions in the division, I think they are the type of fights in which have to be next for Jaron Ennis. And I think it's long overdue, the fact that we haven't really been seeing Jaron Ennis against the elite of the elite. And again, I think hopefully with this performance we will be getting that next. Again, we'll have to wait and see. I think the only way that really happens is with His Excellency's involvement. Again, I don't think, unless it's Abbas Barriou, I don't believe it will just be on a matchroom show, a big unification fight. I think it would take His Excellency's involvement, but at the same time, it would not surprise me if it's Abbas Barriou next for, his belt, which is, I believe, the WBA belt. So because it's like an easier fight to make with Abbas Barriou being with Wasserman and things like that. Again, I think it's just an easier fight to make. So that's probably not going to have a tremendous amount of hype, but at least it'll have a world title. And then maybe come, I suppose, later on next year, then His Excellency will get involved and possibly do a Virgil Ortiz fight. If not, maybe as Xander Zayas if he's still champion by that point. But again, still for Ennis, great victory. And I was also impressed with the fact that basically as soon as he went onto the front foot, he was able to have success and get a knockout as well, which was nice to see because I think I'm coming so accustomed to seeing Jaron Ennis fighting on the back foot that it just was a nice surprise to see him actually come onto the front foot after being on the back foot for the early bit of the round and then being able to actually distribute some damage and cause some pain. Moving on to the co-main event in which I wanted to quickly touch upon, which of course was Guido Vianello winning via TKO in round 5 versus Alexis Barriere to become WBC Continental American Heavyweight Champion. Matchroom probably will drop Alexis Barriere now, to be honest, and that really wouldn't surprise me if they do that because Barriere was boxing well and he did look quite good in that fight. He was looking like the cleaner boxer out of the two, but Vianello's awkward kind of explosive movements and jumping in and trying to fling his jab kind of around any kind of guard in which Barriere kept, and also the fact that Barriere kept exposing his chin as well. I think that's just a recipe to showcase that he isn't going to be an elite heavyweight, Barriere, and it's a bit of a shame because I think his timing is really good, and if he was a bit better in them defensive departments and also could take a punch a bit better, I think he would definitely be able to have more success. But this was his first kind of true test of how well he could take a punch, and Vianello's quite a hard puncher, but he's not up there with the best, the most powerful guys in the division. So the fact that he got knocked out badly against Vianello is not a good sign, of course, for Barriere. Again, I thought Barriere was going to be able to win because I was impressed with his technical pedigree and his timing, and I thought he would be able to, catch Vianello, who comes in recklessly on the front foot, catch him on the back foot, and then be able to hurt him. But of course, he wasn't able to do that. So yet again, it's another quite surprising victory for Vianello. He's had a strange career, really, up to this point. I mean, of course, he has the amateur background that he has, and then he went on to be pushed quite well by Top Rank, and then, he's had a couple of defeats against, pretty high-level guys. I mean, the Ajagba fight was quite a close split decision fight, and maybe they might try and make that as a rematch now. Perhaps there could be a bit of hype around that as a rematch, but again, at the same time, Ajagba is coming off a draw against Bacoli, so perhaps he could get a bigger fight instead of that. But again, maybe they might do that. But for Vianello, he's beaten Makhmudov, he's beaten Barriere. That Makhmudov fight, of course, has aged well, and so will he perhaps be given a good opportunity as a kind of like a home fighter who's pushed by Top Rank? Again, I don't know. Top Rank don't really seem to be doing many shows at the moment or really pushing their fighters that much as a whole. But still, it will be interesting to see if Vianello continues his kind of away fighter run, or if he actually is given, that opportunity to showcase his skills as a home fighter again after coming off this victory. Moving on to speak about the Arslanbek Makhmudov victory via unanimous decision versus Dave Allen. It was a great event, really. I mean, I think the whole show was quite an entertaining show, and the fans did really turn out for Dave Allen, which was great to see. But as a whole, as a fight, it wasn't really the best of fights. I mean, Dave Allen was just wasn't able to be good enough, and I mean, he said it himself. He showed a great chin, and that's something in which we've always seen with Dave Allen, but he couldn't land through the shots of Makhmudov for the most part. He did on occasion land, an alright kind of winging overhand, but he really wasn't able to get to work enough and wasn't able to do enough. And as a whole, Makhmudov, I actually was very impressed with Makhmudov. I thought that was the best that I've ever seen Makhmudov box. Normally you see him on the front foot, gassing out after a few rounds, which is what everybody kind of expected him to do. But, he was actually on the back foot. Yes, his hands were incredibly low, and yes, the pace was very slow, but he was managing his work rate. He knew that he didn't want to get gassed out. He was actually boxing on the back foot, maintaining quite a good range, making Dave Allen not really want to commit, not really want to come in, and it was working well for him. So, again, I think that was the best version of Makhmudov we've seen. He did land a few, good power shots, and of course, that Dave Allen acknowledged that, and it was impressive again to see Dave Allen be able to walk through them shots. And to be fair, Dave did have his moments where he had the fans kind of excited and I suppose, captivated, where he was in the ninth round and he pretty much was just winging everything he had at Makhmudov and almost got him out there to an extent, but still it wasn't enough, and then he kind of blew out his gas tank and he couldn't really give any more. I mean, anytime he did kind of land on Makhmudov, it looked like it hurt him, but still, it wasn't enough, and that was clear and obvious that it wasn't enough. And again, I love Dave Allen, he seems like a great guy, I'm a fan of him, but he's just never really been the guy where you can really rely on and, back enough to really kind of think, oh, he's going to win this, it's guaranteed. There's no fight in which you feel like it's guaranteed a great performance from Dave Allen. And again, this just wasn't good enough from him. But for Makhmudov, again, like I say, I think it was a very good performance for him. I think it will be interesting to see what happens next. I think Matchroom might even sign Makhmudov, and I wouldn't blame him for doing that, to be fair. I think he's a good name that can be sold in an entertaining way as this kind of scary Russian fighter and could get some good matchups. I think he won't get Joshua next. I highly doubt he'll get Joshua next. I know that they were kind of very keen to try and ask questions about it, all the kind of journalists afterwards, but it's just not going to happen. And Frank Smith was very quick to kind of brush that aside. But who he could fight next, there's a couple decent options. Maybe a Joe Joyce fight could be a good fight. Maybe a Philip Hergovich fight could be a good fight. Just them other kind of slower paced heavyweights who could, perhaps provide some entertaining fights there. I think either of them two fights could be a good fight. But yeah, like I said, I just doubt that the AJ fight will be next. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't need like the video. Subscribe if you're new. And thanks for watching.